Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to be reacting to another video from Kage called How Naruto Should Have Ended. Now, I'm really interested in this video because if you were to ask almost any Naruto fan, they will tell you that one arc that almost everyone in the Naruto fandom will agree was probably the worst one is without a doubt the war arc. Like there was just a lot of problems with the arc itself. Now I'm not going to go into all of them because otherwise this video will be a lot longer than it needs to be. Now the video in itself that we're going to watch is about nearly a half hour long, so let's just go ahead and watch the video. But before we do, as always guys, if you want to show your support, consider clicking on the like button, share the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And also, if you have subscribed, make sure to click on the bell icon because that will notify you when a new video goes out. So before we watch the video, let me just say or remind you that if you want another way to support the channel, there is a link in the description box down below that you can follow, and you'll be able to show your support for the channel there. So with that being said, let's go ahead and watch the video. This is How Naruto Should Have Ended by Kage. Let me just go ahead and full screen this and play.
Yo, how's it going everybody? Kage here, and welcome to today's video. The subject matter should be pretty obvious. The title and thumbnail should have made it quite evident that I'm going to be talking about how I think Naruto should have ended, but let me place some emphasis on the I think part of that sentence. In simpler terms, I don't claim to speak on behalf of everybody. This is my own opinion, at least for the most part. I'm going to base a handful of changes on the fan base's general consensus about a particular plot point or series moment, but for the most part, this is going to be based entirely on my own opinion. Though some disagreements are unavoidable, you're not going to see eye to eye with me on everything that I say throughout this video, but I hope most of you still enjoy it nonetheless. Now, I might be getting a bit ahead of myself. Some of you may be a little confused, so let me briefly outline how I'm going to be laying out this video. First of all, it's a follow-up to a video I posted last week talking about how I feel Naruto's war arc could have been improved. Now, you don't have to go watch the video by any means. As a matter of fact, I don't really think you're missing out on much if you don't go watch it, but maybe if you do check it out, it'll give you a better idea of the frame of mind that I'm approaching this from. So if you want to go watch it first, I guess I'll leave a link in the description, or you can just go find the video on my channel, but that doesn't really matter. The main reason I brought it up is because I'm going to be picking up where I left off in that video, which is the point at which Madara arrived on the battlefield. Now, the thumbnail, and I guess the title to some extent, may have led you to believe that I'm going to be strictly discussing the very end of Naruto, with Kaguya, Naruto versus Sasuke, the Sage of Six Paths, and all of that. Right. And I will get to covering that stuff, so don't worry. But in order to do that, I'm going to have to start by tackling all the stuff that came directly before it. As a matter of fact, that's the only reason I made last week's video about the war arc in the first place, because the ideal ending that I have in mind for Naruto requires making a lot of narrative changes starting from as early as the beginning of the war arc. And since I already made an entire...
I did see that I can completely understand, because look, like if you're like me and you like to sometimes sit down and just think about some of the material that you've taken in over your life, whether it's movies, TV shows, books, comic books, like one thing that you sometimes, or this is just me, maybe you guys don't do that, or maybe if you do, let me know. But sometimes I like to think about, like a certain part of every story and just think, like just think about how good was it, like looking back at it in hindsight. And sometimes I find out that, a lot of them are, like, they tend to have problems, so you try to come up with your own ways of fixing them. And when I try to do that with Naruto, the thing is, you realize that in order to fix a lot of the problems in just this one arc, you realize you have to go back and make a lot of changes in the previous story. And that in itself should tell you just how badly the war arc was written. While I will admit there are moments in the story that I do enjoy, and I mean heavily enjoy, overall as an arc it was not all that good.
Entire video about the war arc, I think it only makes sense for me to start talking about how I think the final arc could have been different. So that's what we're going to be doing in this video. Without wasting any more time on this incredibly lengthy intro segment, let's just get right into the topic at hand and start discussing how Naruto's final arc and how its ending could have been better. So just like I said in last week's video, the overall story structure is going to remain the same. I really like the vision that Kishimoto had in mind for the end of the series. He just made a lot of really bad calls as an author, and it resulted in a final product that wasn't nearly as good as it should have been. Now, the first sign of this...
I get the feeling a lot of people are going to have a different opinion on the prequels, considering the sequel trilogy came out.
Sloppiness is the insane amount of ass pulls, contradictions, deus ex machina, and things of that nature. This shit is fucking omnipresent throughout Naruto's final arc. And now look, it's possible to justify a lot of this stuff by doing some pretty arduous mental gymnastics, but first of all, that should never be expected of a reader, and second of all, that only applies to some of these examples. The other...
And that's, well, just to speak on his point that he just made, that's usually my biggest gripe with, you guys know that I recently started covering the Boruto manga, and one thing that I have always had a problem with Boruto as a series, but more importantly with the Boruto fans, or a lot of the Boruto defenders. Now, of course, I'm not speaking about everyone, just that small subset of the Boruto fandom that just heavily, and I mean heavily, defend the series, because whenever you come up with any sort of criticism, like you always criticize something, like you're always asking, hey, why didn't this character do this in this situation, or like how did this happen considering earlier it was established to this, and so on and so forth. Like whenever they try to answer you, they can never come up with a clear answer other than, like it's clear that they came up with this answer on their own. Like they try so heavily to explain away any inconsistencies when it comes to the plot, or any just contrivances or coincidences. Like the thing is, like he said, your audience should never have to do that. It should be very, very clear what's happening in the story. Like you don't need to do any, like he said, mental gymnastics in order to explain away a lot of the a lot of the plot holes or contrivances or inconsistencies. Like you should never have to do that. And I found that in the Boruto series, like ever since it started, especially in the more recent arc with Ishiki, I realized that a lot of people have tried to defend it whenever someone brings up any form of criticism whatsoever. It's just, to me, it's like, I know most Boruto fans understand that it's not the most well-written story whatsoever. I do admit that what's going on now in the story is better than what we've been getting for years. But guys, you got to admit that still doesn't make it good. Like, yeah, it's better, but it's not actually good. Like, it's just, it's not. I'm sorry. It's just, I'm sorry. Again, if you disagree with me, that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. But yeah, it's still not a good story, not in my opinion.
Others are just straight up plot holes or contrivances. At best, they're extremely convenient coincidences, and then there are also just plenty of instances of really bad or stupid writing. Let me provide a list of examples of...
Yeah, the Izanami, that was bad. Uchiha without senju implants are able to use Izanagi. Yeah, that did not make any sense, even though you established, again, that in order for someone to use the Izanagi, you need to have both Uchiha and Senju DNA. That's how someone like Danzo was able to use the Izanagi. He had the Sharingan, which gave him the Uchiha's chakra, and he had Hashirama cells implanted into him. That insanely fucked up arm. Like, that's how he was able to use Izanagi. Obito revives the Jubi, missing the 2 entire Biju. Yes, that's true, and that pretty much invalidates the entire war, because the entire point of it was that the entire point of the war was to capture the 8 and 9 tails so you can revive the Biju. But if you're telling me that not the Biju, the Jubi, if you're telling me that you could have done this the entire time, then why the fuck did you start a fucking war? Yeah, Orochimaru should not have come back. The Reaper release mask, that's true. Yeah, this was fucking dumb. They never explained this. And this. Sorry, I'm gonna lower the volume because I don't know if that's copyrighted, but we'll see. Yeah, both were dumb. Obito can't use Kami because the Jubi's inside him. Yeah, that's true. That's, I mean, to me, like, the thing about this is that, to me, it shows you, like, one of the biggest problems with Kishimoto as a writer. And sometimes, and it's not just Kishimoto, you see this, just to give you another example, but in Bleach, for example, the ending, or with Yuha. Like, one of the biggest problems with Yuha, at least from a narrative perspective, is that you made these characters so fucking broken that you had to come up with some contrived explanation as to how like these characters would even remotely be able to stand a chance against them. Like again, even Kishimoto admitted that the same thing happened with Madara. Like when he had both his Rinnegan, he's the Ten Tails Jinchuriki. By all accounts and purposes, like even Naruto and Sasuke, even after getting the power ups from the Sage of Six Paths, like they still wouldn't have been able to beat him. I'm sorry, but they wouldn't have been able to. It's just, it's like this is a problem, and this is a problem that extends to the Boruto manga, because except this time it happened to the two of the protagonists, Naruto and Sasuke. Well, they yeah, I get they may not be the protagonists of the story, but for me, like the problem with them is that, you know, Kishimoto at the end, he also realized that Naruto and Sasuke were too powerful, and especially now that they're adults, and now you would imagine that they would have perfectly mastered whatever abilities they have. Like I think it was mentioned even in the data books that Sasuke has fully mastered the abilities of the Rinnegan, and Naruto, you would imagine, has full mastery of the Kyuubi's abilities, and not to mention the other abilities that he got from the other tailed beasts when they gave him like a bit of his chakra. Not to mention he has Six Path Sage Mode and regular Sage Mode, which are pretty much busted on their own. Like yeah, it's just, to me it feels like they had to be nerfed because of plot. Like just because, like I know a lot of people are going to come up with, or at least they'll try to come up with a bunch of in-universe explanation as to, oh, this is how Naruto and Sasuke can't do this because blah blah blah. But look, guys, it's plot, okay? Like that's the explanation. They got nerfed because of plot, because they know that a story can't happen if Naruto and Sasuke were realistically as powerful as they should be. Okay, that's it. That's the explanation. I know it sucks, but that's the truth. The writers realized that Naruto and Sasuke were too powerful, so they had to find some way to depower them, even if it meant that it only happened because of plot. Because plot said so. Because story can't happen if these two can just one-shot these villains as they should be able to. And it was the same thing with Obito. Like he was the Ten Tails Jinchuriki, he had the power of the Rinnegan, and he had the power of Kamui, which in all honesty should have made him nigh unbeatable. But again, Kishimoto realized that I made this guy too powerful. Now I don't know how, like how these the main characters can resolve this problem. So I had to come up with some bullshit plot explanation as to take away one of his more powerful abilities. Yeah, oi. Yes, yeah, again, like this is, like, so Obito couldn't do it, but Madara could. Yeah. He uses multiple ocular powers without his eyes. Now this, to me, again, like this is also something that doesn't really make any sense, but we have seen Madara use the Susanoo, even though he didn't have like either of his eyes, so I guess you could sort of explain it in a way to where, you know, when a member of the Uchiha, whenever they awaken an ability, whenever they awaken, or whenever their abilities evolve from just regular eyes to the Sharingan, to the Mangekyo Sharingan, to the EMS, to the Rinnegan, you could say that because they have that chakra in them, like even though they may not have an eye to focus their abilities, like they still have that chakra there. So you could say that maybe they still could technically use those abilities, but maybe not as refined as you could say as they would be with the eyes. Which is why, to me, in one of the recent chapters, I can't remember the most recent one was 55. Yeah, it was in chapter 55 where Sasuke said that his Rinnegan is pretty much useless now. Like, to me, that didn't really make any sense. Like, just because your eye was destroyed doesn't necessarily mean that you couldn't access that power. Because, again, we've seen instances in the past, like, again, this one in particular, where Madara is using one of the powers of the Rinnegan, and yet he doesn't have those powers anymore. So, again, to me, it just feels like, yeah, or maybe it's a case where they can't use certain abilities. Like maybe he needs like the physical Rinnegan in order to, because he specifically said that he can't like use space-time, or maybe he was implying that he can't use space-time ninjutsu anymore because he needs the physical Rinnegan in order to do that. But I don't know. It's just to me like the whole when it comes to the Naruto universe, the whole eyes and how exactly they work. It's just like there's so much confusion there. It's honestly not even funny anymore. Tobirama's history type can't tell a shadow clone apart from Madara. Yeah, that was also dumb. That made no sense. And also, let me make this clear too. A point that he made before about how Uchihas who don't have Senju DNA can use Izanagi. I want to point out that Madara here still didn't have, at this time, he didn't have Hashirama's DNA grafted onto his body at this time. So there's no way he should have been able to use Izanagi at this point. Madara sends the ghetto Mazawa is still inside of Obito. Yeah, that's also dumb. Yeah, this was incredibly contrived. You don't even need to explain this one. I think everyone agrees this is dumb. This also shouldn't have happened. This was also okay. So not I don't want to focus on the point that he makes, but specifically, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to hint at a future video coming to my channel, and it has to do with this moment in particular. And it's specifically because a lot of people are making this statement that Sasuke has Hashirama cells, and they make this because it make this statement to counter people who say that, if Sasuke gets a Hashirama arm because he doesn't have one now, made of Hashirama cells, then it's possible he'll awaken another Rinnegan in his right eye. And a lot of people have said, well, that's probably not going to happen because he already has Hashirama cells. And I just want to say, no, he doesn't. And again, I hope to explain in detail in the video that I'm going to make, which again, that's not going to be just a regular video. That's going to be like an actual scripted video that's going to be fully edited to hopefully make it as clear as possible that this is not true. Yep, these are all, oh, this was specifically dumb. Do I even need to say anything about this? Like, I think that's pretty obvious why that's stupid. Yeah, this was also...
I also neglected to mention a handful of other things, like how Obito arbitrarily opted not to use his Rinnegan abilities, probably because Kishimoto just decided it would make him too powerful. Like,
Yeah.
I get it, apparently they consume a lot of chakra, but Obito was casually controlling six-tailed beasts at once. Plus, he...
Well, actually 7. See, 7 right there. So a little bit of a mistake. But yeah, again, this is another problem that I have always had when it comes to how Sasuke is being handled or has been handled for like ever since the Boruto story has began, which is the fact that we never see Sasuke fully utilizing the Rinnegan's abilities. But again, a lot of people try to use this excuse of, well, the Rinnegan uses a lot of chakra. But the thing is, it's like we know that's again. It was said in the data book, in one of the data books. I can't remember which one it was, like right now off the top of my head, but it was mentioned that Sasuke, when he's an adult, has fully mastered the abilities of the Rinnegan. And we're talking about someone who, when he first got the Rinnegan, was said to have not properly mastered it yet, and yet despite that was still good enough to where he was able to put all 9-tailed beasts under his control with just one look, and then casually made 9 Chibaku Tenseis like it was nothing. Whereas Nagato, who had the Rinnegan a lot longer than Sasuke at that point, could barely make 1 Planetary Devastation, 1 Chibaku Tensei. And yet Sasuke made 9 like it was nothing, and they were good. They were strong enough to the point where they were able to keep the tailed beast contained. And remember, one of those tailed beasts was 1/2 of Kurama, which, according to the story, like even half of Kurama is insanely powerful. And yet Sasuke was able to do that. And yet you're telling me that Rinnegan, he can't use the Rinnegan abilities because he uses up too much chakra. And a lot of people attribute that to the Naruto Gaiden, to where Sasuke said, You know, like he uses up a lot of chakra. Like I was low on chakra, and then when it came back, now my full now my ocular abilities have come back. But what a lot of people seem to forget is that Sasuke specifically said that what uses up a lot of chakra is searching Kaguya's dimensions and opening those portals. It's those abilities specifically that use up a lot of chakra, not the other Rinnegan abilities. It's the abilities that you could attribute to the time-space abilities that he got with his Rinnegan. Those abilities, you could say, yes, use up a lot of chakra, but not the other Rinnegan abilities. And those are the ones that we have always been wondering, like, why are we never seeing Sasuke utilize these abilities? And again, people still utilize that argument of, oh, it takes a lot of chakra. But at the same time, did you guys forget that one of the Rinnegan's abilities is to absorb chakra? So you would think, well, if he's ever low on chakra, why doesn't he just absorb some? Well, again, now, granted, you would need a source, but if there is one there, like, okay, let's say, for example, his battle with Ishiki. Like you say, one of the reasons why he can't utilize the abilities of the Rinnegan is because he's sometimes low on chakra. Then why didn't he absorb any of Ishiki's chakra? Why didn't he do any of that? And again, it's like it goes back to they nerfed him. They didn't have him use it because plot. Because plot said that Naruto and Sasuke had to lose that fight, so they purposely had them not use any of the abilities that would have given them an advantage in that fight. And then when it comes to Naruto, they had to give him that Aspel Baryon mode in order for him to do anything, even though he should have been fine on his own. But no. People still keep praising Boruto like it's such a fucking well-written series. Again, I have nothing against anyone who enjoys the series. Again, you're free to enjoy whatever the hell you want. But when you say it is a well-written series, you better have some pretty good fucking explanations and not some contrived ones.
He didn't even start using his Rinnegan powers after he became Jubito, so
yeah.
What fucking gives?
Again, if the whole argument is chakra, when he became the Ten Tails Jinchuriki, he should have had more than enough chakra. But still, didn't use it because, again, plot.
Another example is how Sakura got this miraculous fucking power that propelled her from maybe like high Chunin, low Chunin level to above Kage level, and it didn't really end up amounting to Dick Bubkiss. She didn't accomplish diddly squat with it. Or the fact that Obito had half of his body crushed underneath the weight of a cave, but his Sharingan was left perfectly intact, and Madara was still able to save him somehow. And don't even get me started on how Naruto talked no
really
jutsu
made
to
any
Obito.
sense.
That made me incredibly upset, and I could probably spend an entire video ranting about that alone. Anyway, let's move on. I've been talking about these issues for quite a long time now, and I think it's about time for me to start discussing how I think they can be fixed. So first of all, I don't really have any problems with how Madara was handled, at least not at the beginning of the arc. His battle against the 4th Division and against the 5 Kage is totally fine, but the battles against Obito and Kabuto both need to be completely overhauled. So let's start with Kabuto. Alright, so first off, Itachi doesn't really need to be there, and at the very least, he should not be carrying the entire battle. Now, I know a lot of people, myself included, really did like seeing Itachi and Sasuke fight alongside one another.
Like I said, this was one of the moments that I really enjoyed in the war arc. Like the fact that seeing Sasuke and Itachi working together. Like I really loved that, and especially the ending moment between them where Itachi fully reveals what happened that night and how, like, yeah, that.
For the first time ever. But Sasuke didn't really do anything in the fight.
True,
and again, Itachi's presence isn't really required. Like, you just have to nerf Kabuto, and then Sasuke would be able to take him on 1v1. It'd be a much better way to show what Sasuke is capable of with his EMS, because we never really got a good introductory battle to serve that purpose, because as soon as he started fighting seriously against the Ten Tails and then eventually Jubito, all of his feats were kind of overshadowed by Naruto's. So the point is, either don't have Itachi there, or have Sasuke contribute just as much as Itachi did in the fight. Second thing, and the most important thing, is Izanami needs to be taken out completely. This was a really stupid jutsu, extremely overpowered insta-kill move that Kabuto had no way to defend himself against. It was like the worst kind of Deus Ex Machina, came out of nowhere, and when Itachi beat Kabuto with it, the victory didn't feel earned. Now, obviously, Sasuke and Itachi can't kill Kabuto. If they do that, he can't release the Edo Tensei, and that would leave the allied shinobi forces in a bit of a pickle. But a very easy way to force Kabuto to undo the jutsu would be having Itachi, if you decide to keep keep him around, of course, press him so hard that he has to undo Edo Tensei in order to survive. Have Sasuke and Itachi back Kabuto into a corner through teamwork, where he's about to get pierced by the Totsuka blade and is thereby forced to release the jutsu in order to get Itachi off the battlefield. This would also be a much better way to lead Sasuke and Kabuto to the battlefield without having Kabuto go through that really stupid Izanami self-discovery process, and without having Sasuke forced to talk to the Hokage. Obviously, his conversation with Itachi could help change his worldview a little bit, make him a bit less hell-bent on destroying Konoha or something like that. But if Kabuto found out that Madara had resisted the Edo Tensei release, he'd probably head straight to the battlefield after finding this out in order to attempt to seal Madara himself, and Sasuke would follow him in hot pursuit. Now, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but to me, this sounds a lot more organic than what happened in the original series. Anyway, this brings me to my next point. Orochimaru should not come back. That didn't make sense at all. That was really weird. He was sealed inside of Itachi's Susanoo gourd by the Totsuka blade, but somehow he had chakra residue on a curse mark somewhere and was able to, like, crawl out. Like, at best, that wasn't Orochimaru. That was some kind of weird senjutsu clone or something. Anyway, by extension, if Orochimaru doesn't come back, then the first 4 Hokage can't either. And look, I know a lot of people probably aren't gonna agree, but it didn't make any sense for there to be this Reaper release mask just lying around in the Hidden Leaf Village that nobody knew about but Orochimaru, especially because Kabuto wanted to add the first 4 Hokage to his arsenal, but he said he couldn't because they were all trapped inside the belly of the Reapers. So if Orochimaru knew about this, surely Kabuto would as well. There are just a whole lot of reasons why this plot device doesn't make sense, and so even though it's at the expense of a lot of really cool moments, the first 4 Hokage, they don't need to return. By extension, Naruto should not only be the Jinchuriki of half of the Nine Tails, he should definitely have the whole thing, because having Minato, like, split it in half just so that he can have Biju mode, it was very bizarre to say the least. Alright, so next up, Obito. Now, he is a lot more difficult to handle because of one thing in particular, that being he completes the 10 Tails without either Gyuki or Kurama. And now, this is kind of dumb because it shits on the entire war arc by invalidating it. It just begs the question, okay then, if it was that simple, why did he even declare war against the allied
Why go
Shinobi
through the
forces?
trouble?
He could have just used the tentacle that B left behind when Sasuke was sent to capture him, and I'm sure he could have gathered some residual chakra some other way. Like, there's no way you can tell me it would have been easier to wipe out Naruto plus all of the other ninja on the planet than it would have been for him to just capture Naruto by himself, right? The war serves no purpose if you make it this easy for him to complete the 10 Tails. So he has to extract Gyuki from Killer Bee and add it to the Geto Mazo, which is thankfully much easier now that he's in possession of the Rinnegan, and he can just use the chains to call the Biju back into the statue. And this would be cool because you'd get a really emotional death scene. You know, Naruto had been bonding with Bee throughout the entire war arc, but Naruto's, he's much tougher.
Also, I just want to point something out. Like, how the hell did B survive this? Because last time I checked, when you get the the tail beast extracted from you, you die. So how the hell did B survive? Like, that made no goddamn sense.
Because realistically, Obito would need to get Kurama from Naruto as well, leaving him without his Biju mode, the thing that he had been working to acquire for the whole arc, and also he'd die. Now, you could easily reverse Naruto's death using Kisho Tensei. This is the jutsu that Chiyo used to bring Gaara back from the dead. When the exact same thing happened to him, he had his Biju extracted from his body. But the problem of Naruto not being able to access his Biju mode still exists. And it would definitely be a huge slap in the face to everybody to see Naruto work to master this form for the entire arc, only to have his ability to use it stripped away from him, at least temporarily. Though I will say, this opens the door for a very nice emotional moment between Naruto and Kurama. He finally manages to befriend the Nine Tails, and then as soon as he does, it gets ripped right out of his body. Now, the way you could go about having the Nine Tails extracted from Naruto would be a battle between he and Madara. I'm pretty sure Madara could use the Rinnegan rods to immobilize Naruto, at which point Obito would be able to extract the Nine Tails and subsequently form the 10 Tails. Now, I need to back up a bit because if all of this happens, it raises the question, well, okay, then who's supposed to bring Naruto back to life? And the only person who I think would feasibly be able to use Kisho Tensei is Tsunade. So she she'd have to give her life in exchange for Naruto. Now, this would create a really bleak fucking tone for the rest of the arc, because B just died,
Yeah,
Naruto
B died,
nearly died, and
Naruto
Tsunade had to die in order to bring him back to life. Kurama's gone. You just have all these really great...
But then it's like, yeah, I know it's kind of bleak, but to me, I feel like, sorry, excuse me for a second. I feel like it kind of would have made the arc better, because one thing that I kind of hated about the arc is that you never got that sense of, that sense of despair that you usually get, or one that you would normally expect from a war, because again, the fact that it's war, you expect a lot of people to die, and you expect there to be like a sense of despair, it's just, so the fact that we never got that, it's just, it honestly kind of sucked, because I get that it's a shonen series and you don't want to get too, we're not talking about we're not talking about a seinen series like Attack on Titan or Berserk, or hell, even in some cases Hunter x Hunter, even though I know Hunter x Hunter is Hunter x Hunter is actually a shonen series, but I mean, there were some pretty bleak moments in that story. But yeah, I feel like this arc kind of needed it, because you can't have a war arc and not have there be like a sense of bleakness to it, because like again, when you get there, the moment when things start to get good feels a lot better, because you've been in this sense of just hopelessness for a lot of time. It's just, I don't know, I feel like the arc kind of missed that.
Character moments,
Or the arc kind of needed that.
Sakura having to come to terms with the fact that
Yeah.
Tsunade's dead. Now, I'm not sure how Tsunade would get to the battlefield after being cut in half by Madara. I'm pretty sure Katsuyu would heal her the same way she did in the main series, but it would take a really long time. So Naruto might be out of commission for a while. But what I think would happen is the 10 Tails would get completed, and like in the main series, the allied shinobi forces would show up right after this. Everyone would notice Naruto's corpse lying on the floor, and Sakura would immediately volunteer to head to the location where the 5 Kage were last seen, so that she could heal Tsunade and see if Tsunade could do anything to heal Naruto. At this point, Tsunade would be like, yeah, the only thing I can do is give my life in exchange for his, and he's a much more valuable asset to the team now than I am. This would be really cool, because Sakura would have to come to terms with the fact that her mentor is dead, but on the flip side, she'd probably be very eager to take up Tsunade's mantle, and at that point, she activates the Byakugo, and it buffs her way more than it did in the main series.
Yeah.
I'm talking like putting her at sub Naruto and Sasuke levels. It would be really
And have
awesome
her
to see her
actually
finally
do
accomplish
something.
some shit just like she did in the battle against Sorcery, and it'd be really easy
Well,
to justify to the audience too, because her
mean, let's
chakra
face it,
control,
Granny
which is the
Chiyo
thing
did most of the
responsible
work
for
in
her
that-
insane
in
level
that
of
story.
strength, has been being
Or in
hyped
that
up since
fight.
the beginning of the Land of Waves arc. Maybe not sub Naruto and Sasuke level, but I really want Sakura to be able to contribute. That's all that matters to me. Also, Tsunade's death would be really fitting, because Naruto, Sasuke,
Right.
and Sakura are the three
Jiraiya is gone, Orochimaru is
students
gone, Tsunade is gone, and then Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura could take it. And dude, it would be really cool if, maybe like no one says it outright, but it would be cool if someone or some people in the allied shinobi forces, maybe from the Leaf Village, would look at those three, especially that moment where they, Sasuke summons Aoda, Naruto summons Gamakichi, and then Sakura summons Katsuyu. It would be pretty awesome if you'd have some of the members from the allied shinobi forces, again from the Leaf Village, would look at them and probably acknowledge them as like the new legendary Sannin. It's just, it would be so freaking cool, and it would be a nice moment of like passing the torch from one generation to the next. I don't know, it's just, it just felt like such a missed opportunity.
of the three Sannin, respectively, and seeing them reunite like this right after the death of the last of the three Sannin would be really cool. Some nice symbolic shit, Now, one thing I forgot to go over is the backstory between Obito and Madara. First of all, don't have Kakashi unlock the Mangekyo Sharingan after killing Rin. That was dumb. Just have him train to unlock it like he initially did in the main series before the retcon. 2, figure out some other fucking way for Madara to save Obito from the boulder. I mean, I'm kind of out of ideas, but here's the thing. I don't want to change Toby to be a different character, because I associate him way too heavily with Obito now, and I do like Obito for what he is, but something needs to be done.
Instead of having him be crushed by the boulder, or maybe like, okay, you can still have the boulder, but don't have it like crush his entire like left side. Like maybe you could still have, like maybe you could just have it to where both his left arm his right arm and his right leg are trapped or have been crushed and are trapped underneath the boulder, so now he can't move. and the time it would take to like cut his arm and his leg so they can free him and then carry him outside would probably take too long. Or if they do, like it would just cause him to bleed out from his wounds and probably like prolong it. So I don't know, maybe it's just like Obito will tell them like, okay, there's no time, like the place is already collapsing around us. Just take this opportunity, Kakashi. Take Rin and go. And actually, before you go, I'm gonna give you my gift, which is where he gives him the his left Sharingan.
So that Obito's rescue doesn't seem nearly as asinine. Madara could use Rene Rebirth, but that.
And in regards to how Obito got saved, you could say that he, like maybe tell him that he like underneath he sent like a white Zetsu clone to like to like protect Obito's body. You know, like maybe they could all work together to at least keep Obito's body from being crushed, and then they could take him away. I don't know. It's just something. I feel like it would probably be a little bit better because this to me it made no sense how how Obito is even still alive, because again half his body got crushed. Like we're talking about a lung, again like the right side of his brain, the right side of his face, like the entire like half of his internal organs are all turned to mush. Like for if anything, this guy shouldn't even be breathing at this point. The fact that he can even talk is a fucking miracle.
That wouldn't really make sense because Nagato was currently in possession of his Rinnegan. And it just wouldn't make any chronological sense for this not to be the case because I'm pretty sure Nagato awakened the Rinnegan in the second Shinobi World War. Obito got crushed by the boulder in the third. So Rene Rebirth can't have. But Kishimoto could probably fucking think of something. Yeah. Anyway, on that note, Obito shouldn't mention him like at all. There are a lot of people under the impression that he started the entire Fourth War because of her. And granted, he does say that that's not the reason, but I can't blame people
like
for not.
Obito himself like says like that's now okay, maybe that was a catalyst, but it's not the sole reason. Like again, I feel like I know the Obito memes are out there, especially back when the chapter where he got unmasked first came out. Like I remember this. Man, so many people were putting out these memes of Obito with the you know what bear. I'm not gonna say because I don't think YouTube likes it when you use that word. But yeah, the memes were everywhere.
I'm believing that because look, Obito mentions Rin quite a few times.
Oh boy. So I just I
First things he brings up.
I knew it instantly when he was about to do it because I remember this clip. And I had to mute it immediately because I don't want to risk getting caught for copyright.
After he's unmasked. Like, immediately, he just says to Kakashi, you let Rin die. And talking about her this much, flashing back to her this much, it gives the readers an impression that Obito started the whole war just because he was upset he didn't get to put his dick inside of her. So that can still be the straw that broke the camel's back, seeing his best friend killed.
Like I said, it could be the catalyst, but not like the sole reason. Like, maybe seeing Rin die like made him cynical, that gave him the cynical outlook towards this world. You know, like he says he doesn't want to live in a world that probably that caused these circumstances where the guy he considered to be his best friend ended up being the one to take the life of the girl that he loved. Well, I say loved, maybe not loved, I'll say like because you know, I mean, they were kids at the time, so I don't know. Maybe he would have grown out of it eventually. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, you could explain it to that point. Like, it's not so much the fact that Rin died eventually. It's the fact that, you know, we're supposed to just like he's supposed to just accept a world where, like, a world that caused the circumstances of his best friend, again, the guy he considered to be his best friend, taking the life of the girl that he likes. It's just, you know, the fact that he doesn't want to live in that world, which is why the idea of the infinite Tsukuyomi sounded so appealing to him. And it's just,
Girl he's in love with.
And also, I don't know if he's going to mention this, but if I was him, one thing that I would change is I wouldn't have Madara reveal that he was the one who sort of manipulated the events of, you know, Rin's death. I get that Madara is someone who is painted to be as like this big mastermind, but I feel like that's probably one thing that he, like, maybe instead of having it be something that he planned, maybe have it to where it's something that was just really was really fortunate for him. You know, just have it be something. I feel like it would be a lot better if it was just something that he capitalized on instead of it being something that he planned, because I feel like it would make him much more sinister that way. Like he saw someone in pain, and instead of doing what probably a decent person would do, which is to, not take advantage of him, he decides to do the shitty thing and, take advantage of him. I feel like it would make him a lot more sinister if that was the case.
But nothing more. He shouldn't still be mentioning it like 25 fucking
Yeah.
years down the road. Anyway, moving on to Jubito and the Ten Tails itself, I think that Obito and Madara can still become the Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails, though I think the process for how they just absorb the entire fucking Jubi needs to be elaborated on. I think a really unique method of doing it would be having Obito or Madara use the Rinnegan to take control of somebody from the allied shinobi forces and have them perform Reaper Death Seal or something of that nature. Now, admittedly, you need somebody pretty fucking strong to seal the entire Ten Tails into somebody, but it makes more sense than them just arbitrarily absorbing the Jubi and becoming its Jinchuriki somehow. I mean, I don't really care how it's done as long as it's elaborated upon. Make becoming the Jinchuriki an actually interesting process. Maybe make it something that all of the members of the allied shinobi forces are in theory able to do, but don't want to because of the point I'm about to bring up next, which is the fact that the Jubi should be impossible to tame. At
Right.
full power, the Nine Tails nearly broke free of Naruto's body, so I don't see why the fucking Ten Tails wouldn't be able to do the same to Obito
That's
and Madara.
true.
So the difficulty of keeping the Ten Tails in check would be enough to offset Obito's ability to use Kamui. I think
Yeah,
that he'd be
that's-
so preoccupied trying to keep this thing from murdering him from the inside that I don't think the ability to phase through objects would make him too threatening. I know it was done as a balancing mechanic in the original series, and it was one that probably needed to be implemented, but making it extremely difficult for Obito to focus on combat.
Dude, I'm sorry. It's just, this image, like, man, I forgot how fucking horrifying this is. And it's, yeah, see, I completely 100% agree with him. Like, you could have done it to where, like, like he said, like, the fact that Obito's, like, most of his concentration is towards keeping the Ten Tails from ripping him apart from the inside could be a good explanation as to why he doesn't use Kamui, as opposed to just, because I have Ten Tails, I can't use Kamui anymore. It's not that he can't, it's just that he doesn't have the ability to focus on using Kamui and keeping the Ten Tails in check at the same time. Just like, I feel like that would have been a better explanation.
Has to suppress the Ten Tails is a pretty good alternative, especially because his inability to use Kamui didn't really make a whole lot of sense.
Right.
Eventually, the Ten Tails would break out of his body due to the pressure being put on him by the rest of the allied shinobi forces fighting him all at once. I mean, that would certainly make a lot more sense than Naruto performing Talk no Jutsu and using a moment of weakness created by that jutsu to tear through Obito and rip the Jubi out that way. Regardless, after the Jubi breaks free, Madara becomes its Jinchuriki, thinking that he has a much better chance of taming it. Of course, in the meantime, he'd have to get Obito to use Rene Rebirth, and now this is a problem, because I think the fact that Obito survived both a tailed beast extraction and casting Rene Rebirth, two things that have been individually responsible for multiple deaths throughout the series, by themselves, again, emphasis on individually, is really dumb. You could probably explain it away by having Madara attach Black Zetsu to Obito's body the same way he did in the main series, and artificially pump chakra into his body to keep him alive that way, because in this ending, Zetsu still belongs to Madara, not fucking Kaguya. So Madara can transmit chakra through him. Then Obito uses Rene Rebirth, and then uses whatever sealing jutsu he did earlier to seal the Ten Tails into Madara's body. Madara would also retrieve both of his Rinnegan much more easily, since I think it would be reasonable to assume he could use Zetsu to suppress Obito's chakra and keep him from using Kamui to go into the other dimension. That way he wouldn't have to follow him there by taking Kakashi's eye,
that was
really silly. Then he would tear through everybody, Guy would get his moment in the spotlight, and the Guy would stay dead because, trust me, his sacrifice would have much more emotional impact than keeping him alive would. But this brings me to what the fuck are Naruto and Sasuke gonna do? Because at this point, I feel like half of the allied shinobi forces would be dead, and Naruto and Sasuke would both be on the brink of death. Because, look, all Naruto would have access to is Sage Mode now. He's not really gonna be able to do much against the Jubi Jinchuriki Madara, and EMS Sasuke would have the exact same issue. But I don't like the Sage of Six Paths appearing out of nowhere. nowhere
it
with
was
no
pretty
explanation.
contrived.
That was a huge head scratcher for me. And yet at the same time, I do like the powers that he
Yeah.
gave Naruto and Sasuke access to. So here's how I think I would alter the Sage of Six Paths appearance. He would still show up. It would be done through this weird, unorthodox variation of the jutsu that Minato and Kushina used to seal themselves in Naruto's psyche, where they would come forth whenever a specified event or series of events took place. Something like that would allow the Sage of Six Paths to either appear in the psyche of both Naruto and Sasuke, or appear as an illusion on the battlefield, or like send his chakra to Earth or something. You know, what he could do is a certain amount of time after the revival of the Ten Tails, he could have a seal somewhere that goes off and projects his chakra somewhere into the world, where he'd be able to meet with Naruto and Sasuke and give them some of his power. And this is where I think Naruto would get his QB chakra mode back, because the Sage of Six Paths could remark that his Nine-Tails chakra mode was very similar to Asura's three-headed avatar, and he'd be
That's
like, well, I can
also
give you
true.
an ability just like that. No need to worry. On that note, they should not fucking reincarnates of Indra and Ashura.
Yes, that is, oh boy. That is 100% correct. Dude, this was so fucking dumb. Like, I seriously, I could not tell you what Kishimoto was thinking when he did this. Like, what the fuck were you thinking? Like,
Actually, the dumbest thing that Kishimoto
Yeah,
did
this
while writing
was
Naruto.
not smart.
It completely shit on the entire premise that
True.
the story first had. It took Naruto from an underdog to the reincarnation of Jesus, and I mean that borderline.
That's true. That's what a lot of people had a problem with when this was eventually revealed. That, and in all honesty, this was my biggest problem when it was revealed, because, and not just with Naruto, it was also with Sasuke, because it made it seem like the only reason why these two were even able to get to where they were, you know, like the only reason why Sasuke was as good as he was, the only reason why Naruto was even able to accomplish all of this is because they were reincarnates of Indra and Ashura, like the literal sons of the Sage of Six Paths himself, the guy who was considered to be the father of the shinobi world. It's so fucking dumb. I honestly have no idea what they were thinking, or what am I saying? What Kishimoto was thinking, and especially with Naruto, because like he said, one of the things that, although I will admit that before even the Ashura reveal, the Ashura reincarnation was even revealed, one thing that got a lot of people turned off on the character of Naruto Uzumaki was when it was revealed he was the child of prophecy. Like the second the second that was revealed, a lot of people were really, and I mean really, pissed off at that, because Naruto, like he said, he went from being someone who was an underdog, someone that had no talent for anything, not ninjutsu, not taijutsu, not kinjutsu, not nothing. The guy was talented at nothing. And but despite all of that, he still busted his ass to get to where he is. But now, because he's the reincarnation of Ashura the Ashura, and in a way related to the actual fucking god of this verse, it completely invalidated all of it. It's just God, I don't know what Kishimoto was thinking.
Literally, that whole plot point that needs to be dismissed. Naruto and Sasuke can still get the powers though, and you can.
I mean, you couldn't have just Kishimoto couldn't have just had it to where, you know, like he could have just said like, you two just remind me of my two sons, like just that alone. You could have just left it at that. He could have just told Sasuke, you remind me of my oldest son, and he could have told Naruto, you remind me of my youngest son. You know, like he was also someone who, you know, always hated giving up. He was someone who, you know, a lot like me, which if I'm being honest, like when it was revealed that, you know, I'm not going to get into this because I feel like it would make the video a lot longer than it is. Maybe I'll make a video of its own where I talk about, you know, specifically the moment where the Sage of Six Paths had to choose between Ashura and Indra. I'll get to maybe we'll see, but Yeah, I get just saying that they were reincarnates was just it was dumb. It was so
Still
fucking
draw a
dumb.
lot of parallels between the two of them
Yeah.
and Indra and Ashura, but you don't have to make them actual fucking reincarnates of the two. The two of them would then go on to fight Madara in an extremely lengthy battle where Madara would have the upper hand for pretty much the entire time because he's way too overpowered, but he, like Obito, would have to fight against the Ten Tails breaking free from his body. Eventually, he'd succumb to the same fate as Obito when Naruto and Sasuke are both on the brink of dying. The Ten Tails would break free, and Naruto and Sasuke would see an opportunity to seal it away. Now, this is where I think you could set up a lot of cool things that already happened in the ending with much better explanations. So first of all, now that they're both equipped to hand...
Also, something else that I would, admittedly, I would change in regards to when it comes to Sasuke is instead of just having a one, I would just give him both eyes Rinnegan. I would just give him the Rinnegan in both eyes. To me, like, I know a lot of people say that because he only received half of the Sage's chakra, he only awakened the Rinnegan in one eye, but if I'm being honest, like, that never made any sense to me. Like, I just, what, like, it's just, I don't know if he just wanted to have Sasuke have like his own unique look. I don't know what it is. I feel like it would be a lot better if he just had the Rinnegan in both eyes, and instead of just having six Tomoe in one, have it be a Rinnegan with a three, and then Rinnegan with the three, sort of saying that he not only has access to the Rinnegan, but he also has access to his Sharingan abilities, and unlike Madara, wouldn't have to like retract the Rinnegan and or regress it back to the Sharingan in order to be able to use those abilities. I feel like that would be a lot better. I don't know. I've always liked the look of both the Rinnegan in both eyes as opposed to just it being in one. I don't know. It's just
handle this thing,
maybe that's
Naruto
just
and
me.
Sasuke would react two completely different ways to seeing the Ten Tails. Sasuke's first instinct would be to either kill it or seal it away, whereas
Yeah.
Naruto would want to try and use his Six Paths powers to split it back into the Nine Biju, especially if he'd just established a friendship with Kurama right before he'd been extracted from it. Now this would help strengthen the foundation of the conflict that goes on between Naruto and Sasuke later on in the arc. It would give Sasuke a much better direct reference to draw from as to why he thinks Naruto isn't fit to be Hokage, and it'd also give them a much more visible thing to fight over than just their philosophy, which you hadn't really gotten to see any of from Sasuke in the first place. It just sort of came out of nowhere. Also, this could be a much better way to justify Kaguya's appearance. Trying to fuck around with the Ten Tails by using the creation of all things, the same jutsu that the Sage of Six Paths used to initially split it into the Nine Biju, might end up leading Naruto to accidentally send Kaguya's conscious back to the forefront of the Ten Tails' mind, allowing her to take over, and through some kind of transformation jutsu or something, compress her body back into its original form. Now, I say with a transformation jutsu because I think Kaguya's transition into the Ten Tails should have been permanent. It didn't really make a whole lot of sense for her to take Madara's body over
Yeah.
and then suddenly have access to her regular body again. Like, she became the Ten Tails as a consequence of eating the fruit of the Shinju tree, and that's how it should have stayed. The only reason she didn't initially transform back, I thought anyway, was because over the course of becoming the Ten Tails, she was slowly driven insane, but regaining her consciousness and awareness would fix this problem. She'd still be batshit crazy, but she'd at least be a bit more composed. And I think she needs to be a lot more composed and a lot more intelligent than she was in the main series. Also, on the subject of Kaguya, don't tie Black Zetsu to her. That was a dumb plot twist. I think it was perfectly fine for him to be the manifestation of Madara as well. And him writing all of Shinobi history was really stupid too. Now, like I said, Kaguya doesn't need to show up, but personally, I really like her design, and I think that given the ending I'm going for, where the Ten Tails breaks out of Madara and Naruto and Sasuke don't actually beat him, it would be a lot more satisfying for there to be an actual threatening enemy that isn't only defeated because of the fact that they're unable to control their power.
That's
Naruto and Sasuke would then go to take Kaguya out. No perfect Susanoo on Kakashi's behalf or any of that. Sakura could still get involved, and Kakashi could still too, considering he still has access to Obito's Sharingan since Madara never popped it out. Though I think I would restrict Kaguya's abilities, keep her from being a fucking dimension hopper. That way she can't trap Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, and Kakashi in another dimension, so that the Sage of Six Paths has to summon every Kage ever from the dead to use a summoning jutsu to bring them back. Like, that was really dumb. Again, Kaguya doesn't have to show up. I just think that it would feel better as a reader, and it would make the ending feel less incomplete if after the Ten Tails broke free from Madara, we had an actual threat. You know, it would just feel really empty if Naruto and Sasuke didn't really get the win there, and then nothing else followed.
The thing is, that's honestly my biggest issue, at least in regards to in regards to like what you could say the war arc in the later part of the Naruto story. The thing is, like when it comes to Naruto and Sasuke, we've never seen them, like he said, we've never seen them get an actual win against an opponent, at least in the later part of the series. Like I can't remember the last opponent. Like when it comes to Sasuke, and this is what's going to sound really pathetic, is that the last opponent that Sasuke really beat was Danzo. I want you to really think about that. The last opponent he really beat was Danzo. And I know a lot of people are probably going to ask, well, what about Kabuto? Well, technically, like he said in this video, that was mostly Itachi. Like, Itachi carried that fight. Sasuke barely did anything. So the last opponent that Sasuke on his own really beat was Danzo. Of all people, fucking Danzo. And when it comes to Naruto, the last opponent that you could say, officially beat was, I guess technically it was Pain. And actually, even then, he didn't necessarily beat him. Yeah, he beat the 6 Paths of Pain, and even then, you could say most of that was due to the Nine Tails. When he fought against the Diva Path, like if the Nine Tails never manifested, Naruto, you could say, technically lost that fight. Even after he mastered Sage Mode, he still technically lost that fight. If Hinata never interfered and gotten stabbed, and he unleashed the power of the Nine Tails, Naruto officially lost. So, and now going into Boruto, they never had an opponent where they like 100% defeated on their own. That wasn't as a result of external circumstances. Even the fight with Momoshiki, like yeah, they beat him, but he was still alive. And in the end, it was technically Boruto who took him out. Granted, he had Naruto's help for that giant Rasengan, and then of course he had Sasuke's help. But when it comes to Naruto and Sasuke, they never had like an official, like all out, like no bullshit victory against anyone. It's been a while since that happened, and that's the one thing that's kind of been disappointing about the Boruto series. I thought that at the very least that person, like the person that they could have beaten would have been Ishiki, but well, plot said no, so whatever. And to me, it's interesting because it's actually that sort of tied to a video that I'm thinking about making that happens to involve these two. And I won't say anything here, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, that's honestly one of my biggest disappointments about the later part of the war arc, and even it extends to Boruto. But again, I have another video planned, which I'll talk more in depth about that in particular. But for now, let's continue with the video.
Regardless, directly after the last antagonist, Naruto and Sasuke have their little scuffle. Though Sasuke wouldn't have the extra insight he received from Hashirama, he would still probably have his resolve shifted a bit thanks to his conversation and meeting with Itachi. He could also have a lengthy conversation with the Sage of Six Paths, asking him to tell him the truth about everything that's gone on throughout all of Shinobi history, since if the Sage of Six Paths is capable of summoning himself to the real world despite the fact that he died like 1,000 years ago, then surely he'd be able to tell Sasuke about a bunch of major historical developments in the Shinobi world. This would lead Sasuke to develop his plan, but in my opinion, Sasuke's plan shouldn't be to unite the world against him, but rather just to rule as an authoritarian dictator with an iron fist. A secondary consequence of doing this could be to unite everybody against him. I'm pretty sure that's what he was going for in the original manga, as a matter of fact, but I think much more emphasis should be placed on the fact that he plans to snuff out all crime, sort of like Kira from Death Note, since nobody alive would have any chance of taking him out. Naruto and Sasuke have their final battle, then the series comes to an end. Madara and Obito don't get redeemed. They don't fucking be like, well, you guys were right all along. The infinite Tsukuyomi doesn't turn people into Zetsu. And I think that after Naruto becomes Hokage, it shouldn't be established that the world has achieved true peace. He's still trying to search for the answer, and even though the 5 great nations have allied with one another, there still need to be problems brewing amongst them. This would give Naruto and the rest of the characters a good chance to reflect on Madara's goal and ask themselves if the infinite Tsukuyomi really was all that bad. As for ships and stuff, I'm not really gonna get into all of that.
No,
personally, I would have liked to see Sasuke kill Sakura, but I don't really mind the two of them getting together in the end either. Also, the series should actually end here. I'd really prefer if Boruto didn't have...
Okay, I'm just gonna. Yeah. Oh boy, don't a lot of us wish that. But yeah. Oh boy, that video was long. And again, I'm sorry if this video is a little bit long. But then again, like I said, the video in itself is nearly a half hour long, and I wanted to stop every now and then to give you guys my sort of my thoughts on some of the things some of the points that he brought up. But yeah, I think I'm just gonna go ahead and end this video right here. I don't want this video to be any longer than necessary. So guys, if you enjoyed this and if you enjoy these types of videos, please consider leaving a like, sharing the video, and if you want more videos like this, guys, please consider subscribing and clicking on the bell icon to let you know whenever I post a brand new video. And like I said at the beginning of the video, or in the previous video, in the previous reaction, if you want me to react to a video that you guys have from another creator that you follow who also talks about anime and manga, please leave them in the description box down below and I'll get to them. But if you want to guarantee that your video gets reacted to as quickly as possible, follow the link in the description box down below, and you will be able to not only support this channel financially, but you'll also be able to guarantee that your video gets seen here on this channel. So with all of that said and out of the way, I'm going to end it right here. Remember to stay safe and take care of yourselves as always, and please join me for the next video. Bye for now.